The neon sign outside Rusty Jack's Roadhouse flickered like a busted heartbeat against the deep Tennessee night. It was the kind of place that smelled of motor oil and stale beer, where the wooden floorboards carried the stomp of steel-toed boots and the jukebox was permanently stuck in the 70s. Friday nights at Rusty Jack's were wild, engines rumbling out front, bikers pouring in with leather vests patched with skulls, and the barmaids hustling cold bottles across sticky counters. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke, laughter, and the occasional crash of glass against the floor. The regulars barely noticed. Fights were as common as darts hitting the board, and that's when she walked in. Her name was Naomi Carter, tall, mid-30s, black, with an effortless presence that commanded attention even when she didn't ask for it. She wore a faded denim jacket over a simple black tee, ripped jeans, and boots that had walked their share of miles. Her hair was tied back in thick curls, and her eyes were steady, the kind that didn't flinch. Naomi wasn't a stranger to rough places like this. She'd been driving down I-40 all day, heading east from Memphis after finishing up a week of substitute teaching at a rough inner-city school. Tonight, she wasn't looking for trouble. Just a burger, a cold Coke, and maybe a quiet corner before hitting the motel. But Rusty Jack's wasn't the kind of place that let a woman like her sit unnoticed for long. Heads turned the moment she pushed the door open. A few men at the pool table paused mid-game, their cues hovering like frozen spears. The barmaid Sandy gave Naomi a quick, sympathetic glance as if to say, "Honey, you sure you want to be here?" Naomi didn't blink. She walked up to the counter, slid onto a stool, and nodded at the bartender. "Cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke." Her voice was calm, almost casual. The bartender, a gray-bearded man named Clyde, raised an eyebrow. "Coke? Not a whiskey?" Naomi smirked. "Caffeine keeps me awake. Whiskey makes me stupid." Clyde gave a dry chuckle. "Fair enough." He scribbled down her order and disappeared into the back. Naomi exhaled, set her elbows on the bar, and let herself relax. But the quiet lasted less than a minute. A group of bikers had noticed her. 4 of them, leather vests stitched with a snarling Wolf insignia. The Iron Fangs. Their laughter was loud, their presence heavy. And their leader, a tall, broad man with sunburnt skin and a mess of blonde hair, had locked eyes on Naomi like a predator circling prey. His name was Rick Crusher Dalton, and he had a reputation from Memphis to Nashville. A man who loved a fight as much as he loved making someone else squirm. He nudged his buddy. "Check her out. City girl in the wrong bar." They all laughed. Naomi pretended not to hear, focusing on the Coke Clyde set in front of her. She took a slow sip, the ice rattling against the glass. But Crusher wasn't about to let her stay invisible. He swaggered over, boots heavy against the floorboards, and leaned an elbow against the bar right beside her. His breath carried whiskey and smoke. Well, didn't think we'd get entertainment tonight." His grin was wide, yellowed teeth flashing. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Naomi didn't turn to him. "Not your sweetheart." The bikers behind him hooted. Crusher's grin faltered just enough to show a flash of irritation, but he recovered quickly. "Feisty. I like that. You got a man?" Naomi finally looked at him, her gaze sharp and steady. "You got a mother who taught you manners?" The bar went quiet for a second, then erupted in nervous laughter from a few scattered tables. Crusher's face darkened. His pride, bruised in front of his pack, demanded retaliation. He leaned closer, voice low and dangerous. "You think you can talk to me like that? In my bar?" Naomi didn't flinch, didn't realize respect had a zip code. The tension snapped. Crusher's hand shot out, quick as a whip, and grabbed the edge of Naomi's shirt. With one violent tug, he ripped it clean down the middle. Gasps echoed through the bar. A woman at the dartboard dropped her drink. Clyde froze halfway through pouring a beer. Naomi's shirt hung open, exposing her collarbone, her chest, and most importantly, The bold, inked design sprawling across her sternum thought it was a tattoo. Large, intricate, and unmistakable. The black and gray portrait of a man's face, crowned with military insignia, surrounded by dog tags and roses. Above it, a phrase arched in Gothic script, "Justice never dies." The room went dead silent. Crusher's smirk faltered as his eyes locked on the tattoo. His face drained of color. One of the bikers behind him muttered, "Holy *T, that's Sergeant Carter." Naomi didn't move. She sat still, her shirt torn, her tattoo bare for everyone to see. Her eyes never left Crusher's. The silence in Rusty Jack's was thick enough to choke on. Every biker, every drunk, every barmaid froze like they'd just seen a ghost. Because they had. Sergeant Marcus Carter, Naomi's late brother, wasn't just a soldier. He was a legend. A Marine who had gone down in Afghanistan after saving half his unit, including some men who later patched into biker clubs across Tennessee. His face had been on murals, t-shirts, and memorials in small towns all over the South. And now, here was his sister, carrying his memory inked into her skin like a banner. Crusher stumbled back a step, his bravado cracking. He glanced at his men, but none of them were laughing anymore. A few even looked guilty. Naomi finally spoke, her voice steady, low, and razor sharp. "You gonna explain to my brother why you just put your hands on me?" The weight of her words hung like a hammer over the bar. Crusher's mouth opened, then closed. His men avoided his gaze, shifting uncomfortably. The silence was broken by a voice from the corner. A heavy-set biker with a gray beard, someone old enough to remember Marcus Carter firsthand, stood up slowly. His voice carried across the room. "That's Carter's sister." The confirmation hit like a thunderclap. Whispers rippled through the bar. "No way. That's his sister. Carter's sister's here." Naomi sat there, exposed but unbroken, the torn shirt falling from her shoulders like a battle flag. She didn't cry, didn't tremble. Her brother's face inked on her. Skin seemed to stare out at the men who'd once idolized him. Crusher took another step back. His cocky swagger was gone, replaced by something Naomi had seen in dozens of men before, shame disguised as silence. Clyde slid a fresh Coke toward her, his voice quiet but firm. "On the house, ma'am." Naomi nodded without breaking eye. Contact with Crusher. She pulled the denim jacket off the back of her stool, slipped it over her shoulders, and covered the tattoo once more, but the damage was done. The bar would never unsee what it had just witnessed. Crusher finally muttered, "I didn't know." Naomi's lips curved into a bitter smile. "That's the problem. You never think past yourself." The bar was still buzzing with whispers. But the message was clear. Crusher had crossed a line no one in Tennessee biker culture dared cross. Naomi stood, dropped a 20 on the counter for Clyde, and turned toward the door. But she didn't rush. She moved slow, deliberate, her boots clicking against the wooden floor like a judge's gavel. As she reached the exit, she paused just long enough to glance over her shoulder. "You boys remember this night. Remember my brother. Because justice has a long memory." And then she was gone, swallowed by the humid Tennessee night, leaving behind a bar full of men who suddenly felt very small. But Naomi's night wasn't over. Not even close, because outside, in the shadows of the parking lot, Crusher's pride was already bleeding into rage. And men like him didn't let humiliation sit still. The night air outside Rusty Jack's carried the heat of summer and the faint tang of gasoline. Naomi walked slowly toward her beat-up Dodge Charger, the denim jacket pulled tight across her chest. Her hands were steady, but inside, her pulse still pounded with adrenaline. She wasn't scared, not really. But she knew men like Rick Crusher Dalton. Bruised egos didn't heal easy, and humiliation was like a wound they had to cauterize with violence. The neon glow from the roadhouse spilled across the gravel lot where a dozen Harley-Davidsons sat lined like sleeping beasts. Naomi's Charger looked out of place, dusty, practical, and scarred from too many long drives. She slid her key into the door, but before she could turn it, she heard heavy footsteps crunching on gravel. Going somewhere? She didn't need to look. Crusher's voice was unmistakable. Naomi slowly turned. Crusher stood a few yards away, his fists clenched, his shoulders tight. Two of his crew lingered behind him, uncertain. Their loyalty wrestled with the memory of Marcus Carter's face on Naomi's chest. Naomi leaned against her car, calm as stone. Bar wasn't really my scene. Crusher's jaw flexed. You think you can walk in, make a fool out of me in front of my own crew, then just drive away? Naomi tilted her head. That was all you. I didn't do a damn thing but sit there. The two bikers behind him shifted, exchanging glances. Crusher ignored them, his voice growing louder, harsher. You don't get it. Around here, respect is everything. You stripped me of mine. And now everybody's gonna think I'm weak. Naomi's eyes narrowed. You want respect? Earn it. Try not tearing shirts off women like a damn animal. Crusher's face twisted. He took a step forward, and for a moment Naomi thought he might swing. But then another voice cut through the night. Dalton. All three men froze. From the doorway of Rusty Jack's, the heavy-set gray-bearded biker stepped out. His name was Big Joe Harlan, a veteran of both war and biker wars, a man people didn't cross lightly. His limp told stories no one dared ask about, and the respect in the way other bikers had made space for him was unmistakable. Back off, Joe said, his gravelly voice carrying like thunder. Crusher spun around. This ain't your business, old man. Joe's gaze was cold steel. That's Carter's sister. Makes it my business. The name hit again like a hammer. Crusher hesitated, but pride still festered in his chest. He spat onto the gravel. You gonna babysit every woman who walks in here flashing ink? Joe's eyes narrowed. That ink means something. Means she's family to every man Marcus. Carter pulled out of hell, including me. The silence that followed was thick with memory. The two bikers behind Crusher lowered their eyes. One muttered, Hell, I was in the convoy that heard about Carter, saved 6 men under fire. Everyone knew his name. Crusher's fists clenched and unclenched, caught between defiance and the crumbling wall of his own reputation. Naomi broke the silence. Her voice was calm but sharp. Walk away, Dalton. You already lost tonight. Don't make it worse. For a long second, no one breathed. Then Crusher turned on his heel, shoving past his men. This ain't over, he muttered, his words dripping with venom. Naomi didn't move until the sound of his boots faded into the night. Then she finally unlocked her charger and slid inside. Big Joe walked closer, leaning against a nearby bike. You all right? Naomi looked at him through the open window. Her guard was still up, but something in Joe's eyes told her he wasn't just another man looking to size her up. He meant what he'd said. I've been through worse, Naomi replied. Joe nodded. I don't doubt it, but Crusher, he won't let this lie. Men like that don't handle shame well. Naomi's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I can handle him. Joe studied her for a moment. Maybe, but let me give you some advice. Don't be around here when he comes looking. He's dangerous when he's cornered. Naomi didn't answer. She started the engine, the charger growling awake. Joe stepped back, raising a hand in parting. Be safe, Carter's sister. Naomi pulled out of the lot and headed toward the highway. The night swallowed her, but Joe's warning lingered in her mind. The motel she checked into was one of those roadside places where the neon vacancy sign buzzed louder than the crickets. Naomi parked under the flickering light, grabbed her duffel, and headed inside. The room smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. The bedspread was thin, the carpet worn, but Naomi had stayed in worse. She tossed her jacket on the chair, washed her face, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed. A message from her cousin back in Memphis. Heard you were in Jackson. You good? Naomi stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. She typed back, ran into trouble, but I'm fine. She set the phone down and lay back against the thin pillows. But sleep didn't come easy. The memory of Crusher's face, that mix of fear and fury when he saw her tattoo, replayed in her mind. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what came next. Because men like Crusher always came back. The next morning, Naomi was back on the road by 8. The sky was washed in pale gold, and the Charger hummed beneath her as she sped east. She thought she'd left the trouble behind in Rusty, Jack's parking lot, but trouble had a way of catching up. By the time she pulled into a gas station outside of Nashville, she spotted them, 2 motorcycles parked at the far end of the lot, engines still warm. The insignia on the vests left no doubt. Iron fangs. Naomi's pulse kicked up. She filled her tank quickly, scanning the lot. The bikers weren't Crusher, but they were his men. Watching, she paid inside, then walked out, her Coke bottle sweating in her hand. One of the bikers whistled low as she passed. "Morning, sweetheart." Naomi didn't answer. She climbed back into her car, started the engine, and pulled out. But in her rearview mirror, she saw them mount their bikes and fall in behind her. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't coincidence. Crusher had sent them. For the next 20 miles they shadowed her, never too close, never too far. Naomi kept her hands steady on the wheel, but her mind raced. She'd dealt with threats before, bad students, angry parents, even her share of street punks. But this was different. This was a pack hunting. Finally, she made a decision. Instead of heading straight through Nashville, she veered south, taking a rural 2-lane road that wound between fields and forests. If they wanted her, she'd force them into open ground. The bikers followed. Naomi's Charger roared as she pressed the gas, the road a blur beneath her tires. The motorcycles revved, keeping pace. Gravel spat from her wheels as she took a sharp curve, her heart thudding with adrenaline. Finally, she spotted a clearing ahead, an abandoned rest stop with a cracked asphalt lot. She pulled in hard, the Charger skidding to a stop. The bikers slowed, circling like wolves before cutting their engines. Naomi stepped out, slamming the door behind her. Her denim jacket hung open, and the faint outline of her tattoo was visible. Beneath her torn shirt, one of the bikers, tall, lanky, with a scar down his cheek, sneered. "Crusher wants to talk." Naomi's eyes narrowed. Funny, he had his chance last night. The other biker, younger, shifted uncomfortably. "Look, lady, you embarrassed him. That don't sit right with the club." Naomi took a step forward, her voice sharp. "Your club wouldn't exist if it wasn't for men like Marcus Carter. Remember that. He bled for people who didn't deserve it. You owe him more respect than this." The younger biker glanced at his partner, uncertainty in his eyes. But the scarred one just smirked. "Respect don't matter. Power does. And Crusher's gonna show you what happens when you mess with his." Naomi's fists clenched. She wasn't a fighter like Marcus, but she wasn't helpless either. "If he wants me, he can come himself. Tell him I said that." The scarred biker chuckled, stepping closer. "Or maybe we just deliver the message ourselves." Before he could take another step, the sound of another engine roared through the clearing. A massive Harley rolled in, chrome gleaming in the sun. It was Big Joe. The 2 bikers stiffened as Joe pulled up, his presence heavy as a storm cloud. He cut the engine, slid off his bike, and stood tall despite his limp. "Boys," Joe rumbled, "don't you have better things to do than Harris Carter's blood?" The scarred biker sneered. "Stay out of this, old man." Joe's gaze hardened. "I told Dalton last night, and I'll tell you now. Marcus Carter saved my life. That makes his sister family. And anyone who touches family answers to me." The younger biker swallowed hard, clearly torn. The scarred one muttered a curse but didn't move. Naomi stepped forward, her voice carrying like fire. You tell Crusher I'm not afraid of him. And if he keeps coming after me, he's gonna learn real fast that Marcus isn't the only Carter who stands their ground. The scarred biker glared, but the younger one grabbed his arm. Let's go. This ain't worth it. They climbed back onto their bikes, engines growling, and sped off down the road. Naomi exhaled, her shoulders finally easing. She turned to Joe. You didn't have to follow me. Joe smirked. Didn't follow. Just knew Dalton would send his dogs. Figured you could use someone at your back. Naomi studied him, then nodded. Thanks. Joe's expression softened. Don't thank me. Thank your brother. Man saved me in Helmand Province back in 2010. I've been carrying that debt ever since. Tonight I just paid a little back. Naomi's chest tightened. She looked away for a moment, blinking against the sting in her eyes. Marcus always said the world was full of good men hiding in rough places. Guess he was right. Joe gave a small chuckle. Maybe, but Dalton ain't done. You humiliated him, and he's the kind to make it a war.